In this video, we will talk about the last two chapters of Gary Allen's work, 9 Dare Call It Conspiracy. Chapter 7, Pressure from Above and Pressure from Below, and Chapter 8, You Are the Answer. In Chapter 7, Allen notes basically as a summary point of the chapter that Nixon's actions were the opposite of his rhetoric, right? When Nixon became president, he transformed himself radically. And one can argue that George W. Bush did the same thing too in 2000, right? He campaigned as a non-interventionist, but then he became president and he absolutely was an interventionist in the affairs of the world. So Bush, George Walker Bush, transformed himself in 2000. Nixon transformed himself running for president, right? And becoming once he became president, he was very different than when he ran for president, right? Especially when he ran for president the first time and was defeated by FDR, or FDR, JFK, John Fitzgerald Kennedy. When he ran the second time, it was a little bit more liberal rhetoric. But he really transformed himself when he became president, had Henry Kissinger as Secretary of State, seems to have influence from the Rockefellers, from Nelson Rockefeller. In this chapter, there's quotations that note from various liberals, for example, that Nixon as a Republican was able to get away with socialist programs that a Democrat president would never have been allowed to get away with. I think that's an interesting concept, and I think it's possibly true, right? When you live inside of a right-left paradigm, it seems that you might have a Republican get away with a very liberal program because Republicans don't want to criticize it and Democrats will endorse it, perhaps. So yeah, it's very possible that Nixon got away with certain things as a Republican that Democrats could never get away with. On page 142, Allen writes that the naive radicals think that under socialism, the people will run everything. Actually, will be a clique of the insiders in total control, consolidating, controlling all wealth. Right, this idea of pressure from below, pressure from above, squishing the middle class, right? The idea, but also, of course, the idea that Allen says is the greatest pressure comes from above, not from below. The CFR elite, for example, the Rockefellers, the Rothschild, other big international banking interests, they're crushing the middle class from above. The pressure from below is just to cause the middle class to fear the poor, right? Rather than try to influence the poor, to help the poor become educated, help the poor become informed, help them become knowledgeable about what really goes on in the world, right? The poor are used by the wealthy to scare the heck out of the middle class, as George Carlin puts it. And I agree with Carlin, right? Even though Carlin's not a college-educated person, he's still a very intelligent person, very perceptive. It's unfortunate he passed away, but he was brilliant. Anyway, now on page 144, and another quote from Allen in very bold letters, or very well, capitalized letters, right? Very boldly standing out. He writes, right, we are going to have a dictatorship of the elite, disguised as the dictatorship of the proletariat. And I don't see that necessarily as happening in America, right? That seems to be a prediction Allen makes that didn't really come true. It may have come true if communism would have survived, right? But it seems to me that in the United States today, the claim that the people who are extremely wealthy, they deserve their wealth. It seems that corporate capitalism is won in America. And the idea is won in America that the people who are extremely wealthy in the United States, they all deserve their wealth because they were the most diligent of entrepreneurs, they worked the hardest, right? They were intelligent and lucky and all that kind of stuff. But really, most of it was luck and most of it was parental wealth, right? Your success rate in America is very much coordinated with the wealth of your parents. Young people today who are born in families where their parents make over $100,000 a year succeed in school at rates so much higher than parents who have income of like $30,000 or less. And that's statistically verifiable and provable. Of course, there can always be the few people that break away from the statistics, certainly. But for the most part, it's true. The correlation is considerable. I wouldn't say it's necessarily a causation, but there's certainly a correlation. I certainly think that when you have a lot of money and you can go to the best school districts in the country and you can go to the best colleges in the country and you don't have to worry about anything in life really, except maybe your parents like grounding you for not working as diligently in school as they wanted you to, you can really get far in life. When you're poor and you're just trying to work, maybe you have to have a summer job and you don't have time to read, you don't have time to write, you don't have time to research, then yeah, if you're just working all the time at some minimum wage job, you don't have time to research these issues, you don't have time to think, you don't have time to read, you don't have time to reason, you don't have time to ponder, right? You don't have time to study for the SAT. All these kind of, or the GRE, or whatever examination you're taking. So yeah, I think that that today we have this society, definitely have this society in which people, even low-class people, they aspire to become wealthy. They aspire to become like the elite. They're never going to become it. Almost, I mean, you might have occasional story on TV they like to play about some success story, some people went from rags to riches, but it's very, very few. Most people in America way overestimate class mobility in this country, and that's statistically proven as well. You can go online and research that. The class mobility in this country is very low, and don't buy any argument that it isn't. Doesn't mean you shouldn't work hard and be diligent. I think you absolutely should be. You should become informed, educated. But the idea that just because you're informed and educated, you can score very high on the SAT, you're well-read, you're well-researched, you're passionate about what you believe, you're passionate about your interest, that doesn't mean you're getting a good job in this nation. You know, your reality better be within the consigned reality, or else you're not going to get a job that's very good, most likely. Maybe at university. Maybe there's universities that want professors who have very interesting perspectives on issues, but for the most part, you want to become part of a business, you don't act like the way I'm acting right now. I guarantee it, you don't act like me if you want to become involved in some business. You want to get involved in some corporate business, even at the low structure, low-level business job. You don't act like the way I'm acting right now. You go along with their exploitation. You help them. You go into the job interview and say, I want to help you make as much money as you can, and I know all about psychology and how I can use it against people to make advertising that's going to cause them to buy more products that you're making and help exploit the idiots further. I wouldn't maybe go quite that far in the interview, but you can't really go too far in an interview talking about how stupid most people are and how you're just really waiting to exploit people, and how you yourself are quite brilliant and will work diligently for the corporation in order to help the corporation make a lot of money by exploiting people who don't have the education or the intelligence necessary to understand how they're being exploited. Well, anyway, in chapter 8 is the idea that you are the answer, right? And Allen says on page 148 here that our job is to defeat the bankers and other wealthy individuals who want to destroy America as we know it. And to do so is and now I'm quoting Allen, not my own views, but is largely a matter of getting others to realize that they have been conned and are continuing to be conned. Right? We have been conned by socialism, conned by corporate capitalism, conned by the internationalist bankers and the wealthy corporatists, being conned into believing the American dream. These things are not realities. Right? They've conned us into watching stupid television programs. They've conned us into not trusting one another, not having relationships with one another. They've conned us into believing that all of our rewards are coming in an afterlife, which I don't know is true or not, but certainly I don't believe that, or I'm not going to accept my life as sucking on earth just so that I can get some maybe rewards in heaven, perhaps, you know, by rendering unto Caesar the things that are Caesar's and the God the things that are God's on earth. Bullshit that. By the way, that's a misinterpretation anyway of that scriptural context, but regardless, I'm not going to be exploited. I'd rather be dead. But anyway, Allen on page 151 notes 14 signposts to slavery. And he says the same thing I've just said. It is better to perish than live as slaves. Of course, that's what we'll quote from Mr. Churchill that Allen ends his book with. And I agree with it. It's better to perish than live as slaves. And of course, the 14 signposts that Allen gives, some of them have already taken place today. The detention of individuals without judicial process, for example. That's happened today, right? The terrorists do not have the right to a trial in America. Even U.S. terrorists, even terrorists that are supposedly U.S. citizens, they're not guaranteed the right to a trial. Surely not an open trial. We haven't had the abolition of private ownership of handguns, but I guarantee you we've been trying to restrict them as much as possible. We haven't had the restrictions on taking out, well, we don't have the elimination of taking out money out of our country and establishing or retaining a foreign bank account by a U.S. Or American citizen, but we have restrictions now. I mean, not an elimination, but some small restrictions here. So we don't have compulsory non-military service, but we're probably heading in that way. We don't have compulsory psychological treatment of non-government workers or public school children, but, well, we still have a situation that for all intents and purposes is almost compulsory, because we have so many parents that let the school district give our children all these drugs in school that they don't need because they have any kind of minor behavioral problem, right? So we do have actually this Brave New World coming into being to a certain extent. So, again, I think that that Gary Allen's book here is very interesting, and I think that some of the things he says here are absolutely absolutely true. I believe that there is an elite. I believe that there are powerful interests, and I believe this book is well worthy of your time and attention to read. Well, thank you for watching these videos on Nine-Day Occult Conspiracy by Gary Allen, and I hope they were interesting. And if you have questions or comments, I would be enjoyed by having a debate on the merits of this work. And again, it's not that I buy into every issue that Gary Allen talks about, but let's have a conversation on my my review of the book, right? The things I've said pertain to Allen's work. Maybe if you think I've misinterpreted something Allen said, have a conversation on that point. Well, thank you for watching. I enjoyed talking about Nine-Day Occult Conspiracy. I hope you enjoyed listening to my videos. Thank you.